Dr. Amanda Blake wiped the sweat from her forehead as she finished treating another injured crew member in the medical bay of the UCS Horizon. The exploration ship had been traveling through deep space for 6 months, searching for new planets that humans could settle on. As the chief medical officer, Amanda had kept busy treating everything from broken bones to space sickness among the crew of 200 people. She had joined the space exploration program 3 years ago after working as an emergency room doctor on Earth. Amanda loved the challenge of treating people in space, where she had limited supplies and equipment. Her medical bag contained everything she owned that mattered: surgical tools, medicines, and her grandmother's lucky pen that she used to write all her medical reports. The ship's alarm suddenly began blaring throughout the corridors. Red warning. Lights flashed as Captain Ryan Murphy's voice came over the speakers. All crew to battle stations. Unknown ships approaching fast. This is not a drill. Amanda quickly secured her medical supplies and prepared the emergency treatment area. She had dealt with emergencies before, but something felt different this time. The fear in the captain's voice made her hands shake as she organized bandages and pain medication. The ship shook violently as something hit the hull. Amanda grabbed onto the medical table to keep from falling. Through the small window in the medical bay, she could see strange ships that looked like giant insects flying through space. Their dark metal surfaces were covered in spikes and strange symbols that glowed red in the darkness. "Those are Vexthari ships," whispered Jake Morris, an engineer who had stumbled into the medical bay with a bleeding cut on his arm. "I heard about them on the outer colonies. They capture people, and no one ever sees them again." Amanda began cleaning Jake's wound while explosions echoed through the ship. The Vexthari were known throughout human space as ruthless hunters. They looked like giant insects that walked on 2 legs, with hard shells covering their bodies and sharp claws for hands. Most frightening of all were their completely black eyes that showed no emotion at all. Another massive impact threw Amanda across the room. Emergency power kicked in, filling the medical bay with dim red light. She could hear laser weapons firing and people shouting in the corridors outside. The battle was not going well for the humans. Captain Murphy burst through the medical bay door, his uniform torn and blood running down his face. "Dr. Blake, we need to evacuate you now. The Vexthari are boarding the ship." "I'm not leaving my patients," Amanda replied firmly, gesturing to the 3 injured crew members lying on medical beds. "These people need help." "There's no time," the captain said urgently. "They're cutting through the hull on every deck. We've lost contact with half the ship." The sound of metal being cut with laser tools grew louder. Sparks began flying from the medical bay door as something tried to cut through from the other side. Captain Murphy drew his laser pistol and pointed it at the door. "Doctor, when I tell you to run, you go straight to the escape pods," he ordered. "Don't stop for anything." Amanda shook her head. "I won't abandon injured people. That goes against everything I believe as a doctor." The door suddenly exploded inward, filling the room with smoke and metal pieces. Through the smoke came 3 Vexthari soldiers. They were even more terrifying in person than Amanda had imagined. Each one stood 7 feet tall, covered in black armor that looked like insect shells. Their movements were quick and jerky, like spiders hunting prey. Captain Murphy fired his weapon, but the laser shots bounced off their armor without causing any damage. One of the Vexthari raised its arm, and Amanda saw that instead of a hand, it had some kind of weapon built into its body. A bright flash filled the room. When Amanda's vision cleared, Captain Murphy was lying on the floor, not moving. The 3 injured crew members had also been shot. She was alone with the alien soldiers, her heart beating so fast she thought it might stop. One of the Vexthari made clicking sounds that might have been speech in their language. It pointed at Amanda with a clawed finger, then at her medical bag. The alien seemed interested in her medical equipment. Amanda slowly picked up her medical bag. trying not to make any sudden movements. The Vexthari watched her carefully with their black eyes. She realized they had not killed her like the others. They wanted her alive for some reason. More Vexthari soldiers entered the medical bay. They began examining her medical tools with great interest, making more clicking sounds to each other. One of them held up a surgical knife and studied it closely under the red emergency lights. Amanda found her voice and spoke quietly. "I'm a doctor. I help people who are hurt." She pointed to herself and then to the medical supplies, hoping they might understand. The largest Vexthari stepped forward and made a series of rapid clicks. The others immediately moved to surround Amanda. They were taking her prisoner, but they were being careful not to hurt her or damage her medical equipment. As they led her out of the medical bay, Amanda saw the destruction throughout the ship. Bodies of crew members were everywhere. Smoke filled the corridors from fires and damaged equipment. The Vexthari had shown no mercy to anyone except her. They brought her to the main cargo bay, where other Vexthari soldiers were loading supplies and equipment into their ships. Amanda saw that they were taking specific things: computers, weapons, and anything that looked like advanced technology. They were not random raiders. This was a planned attack. A group of Vexthari forced Amanda onto one of their ships. The inside looked nothing like human spacecraft. Everything was dark and covered in the same spiky material as their armor. Strange symbols glowed on the walls, and the air smelled like metal and something sweet that made her feel sick. They put her in a small room with no windows. The walls were made of the same dark metal as everything else on the ship. There was a flat surface that might have been a bed and a small area that could have been for waste. Amanda sat down and held her medical bag tightly against her chest. Through the walls, she could feel the ship starting to move. They were leaving the horizon behind with all her friends and colleagues dead. Amanda had never felt so alone in her entire life. Hours passed before a Vexthari came to her cell. This one was different from the soldiers. It moved more slowly and carefully. It made soft clicking sounds and gestured toward Amanda's medical bag. When she opened it, the alien examined each tool with great interest. Amanda realized that the Vexthari had never seen human medical equipment before. They seemed fascinated by her surgical instruments and medicines. She tried to explain what each item was used for, using simple gestures and words. The alien left and returned with what looked like medical tools of their own. They were crude and sharp, designed more for cutting than healing. Amanda understood that Vexthari medicine was very different from human medicine. They seemed to believe that weakness should be removed, not treated. As the ship continued through space toward an unknown destination, Amanda began to understand why she had been captured. The Vexthari wanted to learn about human medicine, probably, so they could better understand how to hurt humans in the future. But Amanda had other plans. If they wanted to learn about human medicine, she would teach them. She would show them that humans were stronger than they thought, and that sometimes the greatest strength came from helping others instead of hurting them. She opened her medical bag and began organizing her supplies. Whatever the Vexthari had planned for her, she would be ready. Amanda had been on the Vexthari prison ship for 2 weeks when she discovered the secret. The alien guards thought she was weak and harmless, so they let her walk around certain areas of the ship without watching her closely. They were wrong about her being harmless. The prison ship was massive, bigger than any human spacecraft Amanda had ever seen. It held thousands of prisoners from many different alien species. The Vexthari kept the prisoners in terrible conditions, giving them barely enough food and water to stay alive. Many prisoners were sick or injured, but the aliens did not care if they died. Amanda had learned to understand some Vexthari words by listening to the guards. They called the ship Kethmer, which meant place of the weak in their language. The Vexthari believed that anyone who got captured was not worth keeping alive, but they kept prisoners anyway to study different species and use them for hard labor. One day, While Amanda was being moved from her cell to another part of the ship, she heard something that made her stop. It was a human voice, speaking very quietly in English. She had thought she was the only human on the entire ship. "Help me," the voice whispered from behind a broken wall panel. "Please, someone help me." Amanda looked around to make sure no guards were watching. Then she squeezed through a gap in the damaged wall. Behind it was a hidden space between the ship's outer and inner walls. Inside, she found Jake Morris, the engineer from her own ship who had been in the medical bay when the attack happened. Jake was in bad condition. His left leg was broken and had healed wrong because no one had set the bone properly. He had cuts and bruises all over his body, and his face was thin from not getting enough food. But he was alive, and Amanda felt hope for the first time since being captured. "Jake, I thought you were dead," Amanda whispered, kneeling down to examine his injuries. "How did you get here?" "I crawled in here after they brought me to the ship," Jake explained quietly. "I've been hiding for 2 weeks. The Vexthari think I died, so they stopped looking for me. But I'm not the only one." Jake led Amanda deeper into the hidden space between the walls. The area was much larger than she had expected, running along several decks of the ship. It was like a secret city hidden inside the prison ship, and it was full of escaped prisoners. Amanda counted at least 50 beings from different species hiding in the secret area. There were blue-skinned Zephyrians with their large eyes and thin bodies. Several green Krillians sat together, their thick arms and strong backs showing they had once been workers or soldiers. A few small Pakari huddled together, their fur dirty and matted from living in the hidden spaces. That most of the hidden prisoners were injured or sick. They had been living on scraps of food and dirty water for weeks or even months. Some had been hiding since the Vexthari first captured them. They were slowly dying, but they preferred that to being prisoners. "We've been trying to help each other," explained Lyra, a Zephyrian scout who had been captured 3 months earlier. Her normally bright blue skin was pale and covered in infected cuts. "But none of us know much about medicine. We've lost 12 people in the last month." Amanda opened her medical bag and began examining the injured prisoners. What she saw made her angry and sad at the same time. These people had wounds and illnesses that she could easily treat with proper medicine and care. They were dying from things that any human doctor could fix. "I can help you," Amanda told them. "I'm a doctor. I can treat your injuries and make you feel better." The prisoners looked at her with hope and disbelief. They had been suffering for so long that they had almost forgotten what it felt like to not be in pain. Amanda got to work immediately. She started with Lyra, whose infected cuts were the most serious problem. Using supplies from her medical bag, Amanda cleaned the wounds and applied antibiotic cream. She showed Jake how to help her, teaching him to hold bandages and keep the area clean while she worked. "Zephyrian skin heals fast when it's clean," Amanda explained as she worked, "but infection spreads quickly too. We caught this just in time." Next, she examined Jake's broken leg. The bone had healed crookedly, but Amanda knew how to fix it. She would need to break it again and set it properly. It would be painful, but Jake would be able to walk normally afterward. "This is going to hurt," Amanda warned him. "But I can make your leg work right again." Jake nodded bravely. "Do what you need to do, Doc. I trust you." Amanda had Jake bite down on a piece of cloth. Then she quickly rebroke the bone and set it in the correct position. Jake's scream was muffled by the cloth, but she could see the pain in his eyes. She splinted his leg with pieces of metal from the ship's walls and wrapped it tightly with bandages. Word spread quickly through the hidden community that a human doctor was helping the injured. More prisoners came to Amanda with their problems. She treated a Krillian whose arm had been crushed and never healed properly. She helped a Pakari who had been sick with fever for weeks. Each patient she helped became stronger and more hopeful. Amanda quickly realized that she did not have enough medical supplies for everyone who needed help. She would need to find more medicine and equipment somehow. The Vexthari kept medical supplies in their own medical bay, but it was heavily guarded. "I know where they keep their medical stuff," said Lisa Grant, a human pilot who had been captured 2 months earlier. Lisa had been working in the ship's lower decks, cleaning and doing maintenance work. "I've seen the guards go in and out of their medical area, but it's always locked." "We need to get inside somehow," Amanda said. "These people need real medicine, not just basic first aid." Lisa smiled for the first time since Amanda had met her. "I might be able to help with that. I was an engineer before I became a pilot. I know how to work with electronic locks." That night, Lisa led Amanda through the ship's maintenance tunnels to the Vexthari medical bay. The aliens had gone to sleep, leaving only 2 guards to watch the prisoner areas. The medical bay was empty. Lisa used tools she had hidden to open the electronic lock on the medical bay door. Inside, Amanda found supplies that were beyond her wildest hopes. The Vexthari had medicines and equipment taken from dozens of different species they had captured. There were human antibiotics, Zephyrian healing salves, Krillian bone strengtheners, and medical tools from races Amanda had never heard of. "They've been collecting medical supplies from every species they capture," Amanda realized. "But they don't know how to use any of it." Amanda and Lisa filled several bags with medical supplies and equipment. They took only what they needed and were careful not to take so much that the guards would notice. They returned to the hidden area with enough supplies to treat dozens of patients. Over the next week, Amanda worked tirelessly to help the hidden prisoners. She taught other prisoners how to assist her, turning Jake, Lisa, and several others into medical helpers. Together, they established a real medical facility in the hidden area. The prisoners began to get better. Lyra's skin returned to its normal bright blue color as her infections healed. Jake started walking on his properly healed leg. The Pakari, who had been sick with fever, became active and alert again. For the first time since being captured, the hidden prisoners had hoped Amanda had done more than just treat their injuries. She had given them back their will to fight. The hidden community began to grow stronger and more organized. They were no longer just hiding and waiting to die. They were planning to do something about their situation, but Amanda knew this was only the beginning. There were thousands of other prisoners on the ship who needed help. She had started something in the hidden spaces between the walls, and now it was growing into something much bigger than just treating injuries. She was building an army of the healed. 3 months had passed since Amanda began her secret medical work in the hidden areas of the prison ship. What started as helping a few escaped prisoners had grown into something much larger. Word of the human doctor had spread throughout the entire ship, reaching prisoners in every cell block and work area. The changes were impossible to hide. Prisoners who had been dying from infections were now healthy and strong. Workers who could barely lift tools because of untreated injuries were now able to do their jobs without pain. The Vexthari guards began to notice that fewer prisoners were dying each week. Amanda had trained 12 other prisoners to help with medical work. Jake Morris had become her best assistant, learning to perform simple surgeries and treat common injuries. Lisa Grant used her engineering skills to build medical tools from scrap metal and broken ship parts. Even Pedro Vasquez, a former human soldier who had been captured 4 months ago, learned to mix medicines and help with patient care. The secret medical facility had grown to take up 3 entire sections between the ship's walls. Amanda had organized it like a real hospital, with different areas for surgery, patient recovery, and medicine storage. The prisoners had worked together to steal power cables and water lines, giving the hidden hospital electricity and clean water, but Amanda's success was creating a problem she had not expected. The Vexthari were starting to ask questions. Commander Zekthu was the highest-ranking Vexthari officer on the prison ship. He was larger than the other aliens, with darker armor and scars covering his shell-like skin. His black eyes showed more intelligence than the common soldiers, and he had begun to investigate the strange changes among the prisoners. The death rate has dropped by 60% in the last 2 months. Ziegfeld clicked to his second in command. Weak prisoners who should have died are still working. This does not follow natural selection. The Vexthari believed that weakness should be removed from any population. To them, helping sick or injured beings was going against the natural order. Only the strong deserved to survive, and helping the weak made the entire group weaker. Ziegfeld ordered his guards to watch the prisoners more carefully. They began searching cell blocks and work areas, looking for anything that might explain why so many prisoners were staying healthy. But Amanda had prepared for this. She had taught the prisoners how to hide their improved health. Workers learned to act tired and weak when guards were watching, even though they felt much better. Prisoners with healed injuries pretended to still be hurt when Vexthari soldiers were nearby. The entire prison population was working together to keep Amanda's medical work secret. Amanda had also established a communication network throughout the ship. Prisoners passed messages using a simple code based on work schedules and meal times. If guards were coming to search an area, the prisoners there would know in advance. If someone needed medical help urgently, word would reach Amanda within hours. The system worked so well that Amanda was able to treat prisoners from every part of the ship. She would sneak through maintenance tunnels and hidden passages to reach different cell blocks. Sometimes prisoners would be brought to her secret hospital. Other times she would perform emergency surgery in dark corners and abandoned storage rooms. Each successful treatment added to Amanda's growing reputation. The prisoners began calling her the healer in their own languages. Stories about her spread from species to species, growing more amazing with each telling. Some said she could bring people back from the dead. Others claimed she could cure any disease or heal any injury. The truth was impressive enough. Amanda had saved over 200 prisoners from death or permanent disability. She had performed surgeries that other species thought were impossible. Using medical knowledge from Earth combined with alien medicines and techniques, she was achieving results that seemed miraculous to the other prisoners. But her greatest achievement was not medical. Amanda had given the prisoners something they had lost: hope. For the first time since being captured, they believed they could survive and maybe even escape. The secret hospital had become the center of a growing resistance movement. The resistance was different from anything the Vexthari had faced before. Instead of using violence and weapons, it was based on helping and healing. Prisoners who had been saved by Amanda became completely loyal to her and to each other. They formed tight groups that looked out for everyone's safety and health. Amanda taught them that every life was valuable, even the lives of their enemies. This was a completely new idea for most of the prisoners. Their own species often believed in survival of the fittest, just like the Vexthari. But Amanda showed them that helping others made everyone stronger, not weaker. The Vexthari guards began to notice changes in prisoner behavior that they could not understand. Prisoners from different species were working together instead of fighting each other. Strong prisoners were helping weak ones instead of taking advantage of them. Work groups were more organized and efficient than ever before. Most disturbing to the guards was that prisoners had stopped trying to escape in the old ways. There were no more desperate attempts to fight guards or break down cell doors. Instead, the prisoners seemed to be planning something much more organized and patient. Commander Ziegfeld decided to investigate personally. He disguised himself as a regular guard and spent several days watching the prisoners work. What he saw confused and worried him. A Krillian worker helped a sick Bakari finish his job assignment. A group of Zephyrians shared their food with prisoners who looked hungry. When a guard accidentally injured a prisoner, others immediately surrounded the injured being and helped him to safety. The prisoners were acting like they cared about each other. This behavior was completely against Vexthari understanding of how intelligent species should act. Competition and conflict were natural. The strong taking from the weak was the way of the universe. But these prisoners were doing the opposite. Zekthil ordered a complete search of the ship. Every cell, storage room, and maintenance area would be examined. He was determined to find out what was causing the prisoners to act so strangely. Search began at dawn on a day that Amanda would never forget. Hundreds of Vexthari soldiers moved through the ship, looking for anything unusual. They found hidden tools, small weapons, and secret food supplies. But they did not find the hidden hospital Amanda had prepared for this day. The moment the search began, her network of helpers moved into action. All medical equipment was quickly hidden in secret compartments built into the ship's walls. Patients who could not be moved were given medicines to make them sleep until the search was over. The secret hospital disappeared as if it had never existed. But the Vexthari found something else that worried them even more. In prisoner cells. Throughout the ship, they discovered small drawings and symbols carved into the walls. The symbols were the same in every cell block. Made by prisoners from completely different species, the symbols showed a simple figure holding what looked like medical tools. Under the figure were marks that represented healing and hope in dozens of different alien languages. The prisoners had created a common symbol for Amanda, and they had spread it throughout the entire ship. Commander Zekthil stared at the symbols. With growing fear, the prisoners had created a religion around the human doctor. She had become more than just a healer to them. She was their leader, their hope, and their reason to keep fighting. For the first time in his military career, Zekthil felt afraid of prisoners. These were not weak beings waiting to die. They were organized, determined, and completely loyal to someone who represented everything the Vexthari hated: mercy, healing, and the protection of the weak. The human doctor had done something impossible. She had turned the ship's weakest inhabitants into its most dangerous threat. And Zekthil had no idea where she was or how to stop her. That night, as the failed search ended, Amanda emerged from her hiding place deep in the ship's maintenance systems. The secret hospital was quickly rebuilt, and she went back to work, treating injured prisoners. But now she knew that the Vexthari were actively hunting for her. The real war was about to begin. The attack came without warning at dawn on Amanda's 4th month aboard the prison ship. Commander Zekthil had spent weeks planning his assault on what he now knew was a hidden resistance movement. He brought 300 armed Vexthari soldiers to the lower decks where he believed the human doctor was hiding. But Zekthil had made a serious mistake. He thought he was fighting a normal rebellion that could be crushed with superior firepower. He did not understand that Amanda had created something completely different, a resistance built on healing instead of killing. The first sign that this would not be a normal battle came when the Vexthari soldiers broke through the hidden entrance to Amanda's medical facility. Instead of finding desperate prisoners with crude weapons, they found an organized hospital with over 50 patients receiving treatment. Amanda stood in the center of the main treatment area, wearing a surgical gown made from cleaned prism uniforms. Her hands were covered in blood from an operation she had been performing on a wounded Krillian. She looked at the armed soldiers calmly and spoke in clear Vexthari language. "Your soldier was brought here an hour ago with severe injuries from a maintenance accident. He will die if I do not finish this surgery. Do you want me to save his life or let him die?" The Vexthari soldiers looked confused. On the operating table was indeed one of their own guards, unconscious and badly hurt. Amanda had been working to repair damage to his internal organs when the attack began. Commander Zekthil pushed through his soldiers and stared at the human doctor. This was not what he had expected to find. "You are treating our soldier?" "I treat everyone who needs help," Amanda replied, returning to her work on the injured guard. "Jake, hold this steady while I repair the tear in his lung." Jake Morris Now Amanda's chief medical assistant calmly held surgical instruments while laser weapons were pointed at them. Around the room, other prisoners continued caring for patients as if the armed soldiers were not there. "This is a trick," Zekthal clicked angrily. "You are trying to confuse us." Amanda looked up from her surgery. "Your soldier fell down a maintenance shaft and broke several ribs. The bones punctured his lung and he was bleeding internally. My people brought him here because they knew I could save him. If you want to shoot me, wait 10 minutes until I finish saving his life." The Vexthari commander had never encountered anything like this before. Every rebellion he had ever fought involved violence and hatred. The prisoners tried to kill guards, and the guards killed prisoners in return. But these prisoners were healing his soldiers instead of hurting them. "Why are you helping our people?" Zekthal demanded. "Because helping people is what doctors do," Amanda answered simply. She continued working on the injured guard with steady hands. "I don't stop being a doctor just because someone is my enemy." Lisa Grant, who had been assisting with another patient, spoke up. "Commander, we have 3 more of your soldiers in the recovery area. They were brought here over the past 2 weeks with various injuries and illnesses. We've been treating them and sending them back to duty when they were healed." Zekthal felt his understanding of the situation crumbling. His intelligence reports had told him that prisoners were disappearing and probably being killed by the resistance. But they were not being killed, they were being healed and returned to work. "Show me these soldiers," he ordered. Lisa led him to another section of the hidden hospital. 3 Vexthari guards were resting in beds made from scavenged materials. All 3 were conscious and looked much healthier than when they had been injured. "The human doctor fixed my broken arm," one guard explained to his commander. "It works better now than it did before the injury. She cured the infection that was making me sick for months," said another. "I feel stronger than I have in years." The third guard was more reluctant to speak, but finally admitted, "She removed a piece of metal that had been stuck in my back since my last battle. I had been in pain for 2 years, but I was too proud to admit it." Commander Zekthal stared at his own soldiers. They had been treated with more care by enemy prisoners than they received from their own military medical staff. Vexthari medicine was crude and painful, designed to get soldiers back to fighting as quickly as possible. But these guards had received careful, gentle treatment that actually made them better than before. The sound of fighting echoed through the ship's corridors. While Zekthal had been investigating the hospital, his soldiers had begun attacking prisoner work areas throughout the ship. But the battle was not going as planned. Tony Rodriguez, a former human marine who had become one of Amanda's trained medical assistants, came running into the hospital. "Dr. Blake, we have wounded coming in from Deck 7. Both prisoners and guards are hurt. Prepare the emergency surgery area," Amanda called out, finishing her work on Zekthal's soldier. "Jake, get the blood supply ready. Lisa, set up triage stations at all entrances." Amanda's hospital immediately transformed into an emergency medical center. Wounded prisoners and Vexthari soldiers were brought in together, and Amanda's team began treating them without caring which side they were on. Commander Zekthal watched in amazement as his enemies worked desperately to save the lives of his soldiers. A Krillian prisoner held a bleeding Vexthari guard while Amanda performed emergency surgery. A Zephyrian medic gave her own blood to help a wounded alien soldier. Former enemies were working together to preserve life. "This is impossible," Zekthal said to himself. "This goes against everything natural." Amanda heard him and looked up from treating a guard's laser burn. "Commander, what's natural is wanting to live and wanting others to live too. Your soldiers are getting better medical care here than anywhere else on this ship." She was right. The Vexthari military medical system was designed to get soldiers back into battle quickly, not to heal them properly. Many guards had chronic injuries and illnesses that were never treated, because asking for help was seen as showing weakness. as the battle continued throughout the ship. Something unprecedented began to happen. Vexthari's soldiers who had been treated by Amanda's medical team began to refuse orders to attack the prisoners. They could not bring themselves to hurt the beings who had saved their lives. "I will not fire on the prisoners," announced the guard whose arm Amanda had healed. "They showed me more kindness than my own commanders ever have." Other guards began laying down their weapons. The battle was turning into something that had never happened in Vexthari history. Soldiers were changing sides not because they were defeated, but because they were grateful. Within hours, Amanda's philosophy of healing was spreading throughout the entire ship. Guards who had been treated by the prisoners began protecting them from other soldiers. Prisoners who had been enemies of each other worked together to help wounded guards. Commander Zekthul found himself facing a complete breakdown of military discipline. His soldiers were more loyal to an enemy doctor than to their own chain of command. The prison ship was transforming into something that looked more like a hospital than a military vessel. The final moment came when Zekthul himself was injured during the fighting. A damaged power cable fell from the ceiling and struck him in the head, knocking him unconscious. When he woke up, he was lying in Amanda's hospital with bandages around his head. "You have a severe concussion," Amanda explained, checking his eyes with a medical light. "You need to rest for several days or you could have permanent brain damage." Zekthul tried to sit up, but Amanda gently pushed him back down. "Why are you helping me? I am your enemy. You're also a patient who needs medical care," Amanda replied. "That's all that matters to me right now." For the first time in his life, Commander Zekthul experienced what it felt like to be cared for instead of feared. The human doctor treated him with the same gentle attention she gave to every patient. She made sure he was comfortable, gave him medicine for his pain, and checked on him regularly. Over the next 3 days, as Zekthul recovered, he watched Amanda's hospital operate. He saw former enemies working together to save lives. He saw his own soldiers choosing to help prisoners instead of guarding them. He saw what happened when healing became more important than fighting. When Zekthul was finally well enough to leave the hospital, he made a decision that would change everything. Instead of resuming the attack on the prisoners, he called for a meeting with Amanda to discuss terms for ending the fighting. The healing war was over, but Amanda's real victory was just beginning. 6 months after her capture, Amanda Blake stood on the bridge of what had once been a Vexthari prison ship. The vessel now served as a mobile hospital, traveling through space to help wounded beings on both sides of the galactic war. The transformation was so complete that visitors could hardly believe it had ever been a place of suffering. Commander Zekthul, now serving as Amanda's military advisor, watched the main screen as they approached another battle zone. His black eyes, once filled with hatred for weakness, now showed something that would have been impossible to imagine before meeting the human doctor: compassion. "Dr. Blake, we are receiving distress calls from 3 different ships," Zekthul reported, 2 Vexthari vessels and 1 human cruiser. "All have wounded that need immediate medical attention." Amanda nodded and began organizing her medical teams. The hospital ship now had over 300 medical staff from dozens of different species. Former prisoners and former guards worked side by side, united by their shared commitment to preserving life. "Jake, prepare surgical teams for multiple species," Amanda called to her chief medical officer. "Lisa, make sure we have blood supplies ready for humans and Vexthari. Pedro, set up the emergency treatment areas." The bridge crew moved with practiced efficiency. What had once been a ship dedicated to causing suffering was now the most advanced medical facility in known space. Amanda had not only healed individual patients, she had healed an entire way of thinking about war and conflict. News of the dreaded healer had spread throughout the galaxy. That was the name other military forces had given to Amanda, though it meant different things to different people. To some, she was dreaded because she could turn enemy soldiers into allies with nothing more than medical care. To others, she was dreaded because she represented the end of traditional warfare. Captain Steve Johnson of the human cruiser UCS Vengeance was one of the ship commanders requesting help. He had been sent to rescue Amanda months ago, but what he found was beyond anything he could have imagined. The woman he had come to save was now commanding a fleet of converted alien vessels. "Permission to come aboard, Dr. Blake." Captain Johnson's voice came over the communication system. "Permission granted, Captain," Amanda replied. "Dock at Medical Bay 3. We'll have your wounded in surgery within minutes." As the human captain's shuttle landed in the medical bay, he was greeted by an impossible sight. Vexthari medical technicians worked alongside human nurses to unload wounded soldiers. The same aliens who had been humanity's greatest enemies were now gently caring for injured humans. Captain Johnson found Amanda in the main surgical suite, performing a complex operation on a Vexthari soldier whose ship had been damaged in battle. Her hands moved with perfect precision as she repaired damage to the alien's internal organs. "Dr. Blake, I'm here to take you home," Captain Johnson said quietly, not wanting to disturb her concentration. Amanda finished suturing an artery before looking up. "Home is wherever people need healing, Captain. Right now that's here, but you're human," Captain Johnson protested. "You belong with your own species, not with these aliens who captured you." Amanda removed her surgical gloves and faced the captain. Around them, the medical bay buzzed with activity as dozens of medical teams treated patients from multiple species. "These people aren't my captors anymore, Captain. They're my colleagues, my friends, and my patients." Jake Morris approached with a medical report. "Doctor, the human patients from Captain Johnson's ship are all stable. The most serious injuries have been treated, and everyone will make a full recovery." "Thank you, Jake," Amanda said, then turned back to Captain Johnson. "Would you like to see what we've accomplished here?" Amanda led the captain on a tour of the hospital ship. They visited recovery wards where former enemies shared rooms and helped each other heal. They saw research laboratories where scientists from different species worked together to develop new medical treatments. They observed training centers where beings learned to heal instead of harm. "This is incredible," Captain Johnson admitted, as they watched a Krillian doctor teaching human medical students about alien anatomy. "But how did you manage to change them so completely?" "I didn't change them," Amanda explained. "I just showed them that healing feels better than hurting. Once someone experiences real compassion, it's hard to go back to causing pain." In the ship's communication center, they listened to reports from across the galaxy. Amanda's influence was spreading far beyond her own vessel. Other military forces were starting to adopt her methods, offering medical aid to enemies and treating prisoners with care instead of cruelty. The Altarian Defense Force has established 3 medical stations in neutral space, reported Sarah Kim, Amanda's communication officer. "They're offering free treatment to anyone who needs it, regardless of species or military affiliation." "The Rigel Coalition has stopped executing prisoners," added another officer. "They're using former enemies as medical assistants instead." Captain Johnson listened to these reports with growing amazement. Amanda's philosophy was changing the nature of warfare throughout the galaxy. Instead of trying to destroy enemies, military forces were trying to heal them. "How long can this last?" Captain Johnson asked. "Eventually, someone will start fighting the old way again," Amanda smiled. "Captain, let me ask you something. After seeing your wounded soldiers treated with such care by former enemies, would you order your crew to attack this ship?" Captain Johnson thought about his injured crew members, now recovering in comfortable beds while being cared for by gentle alien nurses. He thought about the Vexthari doctor who had saved his weapons officer's life, working for hours to repair damage that human medicine couldn't fix. "No," he admitted. I couldn't attack people who saved my crew. That's exactly the point, Amanda said. It's very hard to hurt someone who has helped you. The more we heal each other, the less we want to fight each other. Amanda showed Captain Johnson the ship's records of conflicts that had ended not through military victory, but through medical diplomacy. Warring species had agreed to stop fighting when they realized they could get better medical care by working together than by remaining enemies. We've ended 12 different conflicts in the past 3 months, Amanda explained. Not through superior firepower, but through superior healing. The captain reviewed the records with growing disbelief. Ancient enemies were laying down weapons and working together. Territories that had been fought over for centuries were being converted into neutral medical zones. The galaxy was becoming more peaceful, one healed patient at a time. The military leaders back on Earth want you to come home, Captain Johnson said. They want to study your methods and use them in our own conflicts. Amanda shook her head. My methods can't be copied and distributed like a technical manual, Captain. They have to be lived and experienced. You can't just tell people to be compassionate. You have to show them what compassion feels like. As if to prove her point, Commander, Zekthul approached with a group of young Vexthari who had requested to join Amanda's medical program. These were soldiers who had chosen healing over fighting, inspired by what they had seen aboard the hospital ship. Dr. Blake, these volunteers are ready to begin medical training, Zekthul reported. They want to learn how to save lives instead of taking them. Amanda looked at the young aliens who had once been trained only for war. Now they wanted to learn the art of healing. It was the most beautiful thing she had ever seen. Welcome to the medical program, Amanda told them. Your first lesson is this: every life is precious, even the life of your enemy. Captain Johnson watched this exchange and finally understood why Amanda would not return to Earth. She had found something more important than returning home. She had found a way to change the galaxy itself. Dr. Blake, I have one final question, Captain Johnson said. What do you want people to remember about what you've done here? Amanda looked out at the stars through the bridge window. Somewhere out there, former enemies were working together to heal instead of harm. Somewhere out there, the galaxy was becoming a better place because people had learned to care for each other. I want them to remember that the strongest thing a person can do is refuse to let others suffer, Amanda said. Not because they deserve help, but because helping others is what makes us truly alive. Captain Johnson returned to his ship that day with a new understanding of what strength really meant. He spread Amanda's story throughout human space, and her legend continued to grow. Dr. Amanda Blake, the dreaded healer, continued her work among the stars. She had proven that humanity's greatest weapon was not its ability to destroy, but its refusal to let others die. In a galaxy torn by endless war, she had become the most feared and respected being alive, not because she could kill, but because she would not stop healing.